Welcome back to Ros Clark Craft. I'm Ros Clark. This is my house. This is my YouTube channel. If you enjoy what you see and what I talk about, then please do subscribe to the channel. You can also click that little notification bell, which will just mean that you get a little message every time I upload a video. At the moment, and probably for the rest of the summer, my uploading schedule is not quite as regular as perhaps I might like it to be, and it has been. So it's probably worth clicking that notification bell if you want to make sure you don't miss any videos. What else can you do? You can like the video or you can dislike the video, thumbs up or thumbs down. Either way, I think it helps with the algorithm. So, you know, do what you like. And if you want to leave a comment, I would love to hear from you. Thank you to everyone who has watched and liked and subscribed all my previous videos. I don't think, I haven't checked. I don't think I've got any outstanding questions. But if you have asked a question here on YouTube or on Facebook or in person somewhere that I haven't yet answered, please do feel free to let me know, and I will make sure I try and do that in my next normal catch-up video. So this is not going to be a normal catch-up video. This is not a great studio tour and tidy up. I mean, if you saw my studio at the moment, you'd think, has there really been any tidying up? There has been some tidying up, but it's still very much in progress. But what this video is going to be, I decided it would take a whole video really to talk you through my painting holiday. So that is what we are going to do this morning. It was, I just want to start by saying it was wonderful. I was so nervous the week before. We had to take lateral flow tests on the Friday morning and send our results in, and I was so scared either that I was going to get pinged and have to self-isolate, or that my test would somehow come out positive and I wouldn't be able to go. And in fact, one of the participants who was supposed to have been there did get pinged and therefore couldn't come, and that was obviously a real shame for her. And when we got there as well, talking to the tutor, she was like, I'd been terrified I'd get pinged, and that hadn't even occurred to me that she wouldn't be able to come. So it was all a bit fraught, but it all worked. And so I left home very early on a Sunday morning, drove down to Devon, had a lovely easy journey, got to the beach by about 9 o'clock in the morning, spent the day on the beach, which was, it was just glorious. And I swam and I lazed, and it was that week when it was really hot weather in the UK, which we don't often have, and it was just delightful. I was somewhat lax in the applying of sun cream, so I did end up somewhat burnt. But do you know what? I think it's probably 15 years since the last time I got vaguely sunburned. It's not a thing I do regularly, so I am not going to worry about it too much. And so then I met up with my friend for tea, and then we went to the place where we were staying. I will put a link in the description below. It's called Coombe Farm Studios. It's in South Devon. It's absolutely lovely. They run all kinds of courses, different kind of painting, and they have a pottery studio and all sorts of things. But also you can book the place itself just as an Airbnb, and it would be, I think, a really great place for like a family getaway, or if you want to go with a group of friends. I think it sleeps up to about 15 in a mix of single and double bedrooms. You can book it, and if you book it on Airbnb, it's self-catering. There's a lovely big lounge with a long dining table. There's a good kitchen. The gardens are beautiful, and then obviously you could go and do whatever you wanted in the area. So I will put a link below, and do check it out if you're interested. The food when we were there, so for the courses, they provide all the meals, and the food was phenomenal. Really, really delicious. Meal after meal of just glorious things. It was so hot when we were there, and so what we had for lunch every day was soup and salad. And you might think, soup on a really hot day? We had cold soup, and I've never been a fan of cold soup before, but now I am thoroughly converted. We had gazpacho, and we had vichyssoise, and we had pea and mint, and oh, they were so lovely. Yes, and accompanied by the most delicious bread, and then lovely sort of kind of Mediterranean-y and North African-y and sort of Middle Eastern kind of dinners mostly. And then, yeah, lovely puddings to go along with those. Oh, I'm just remembering. And it was sort of cooked breakfast every other day, which I thought was quite good. You don't absolutely need a cooked breakfast every day, but it does always feel like a treat on holiday if you get a cooked breakfast. So the food was delicious. The accommodation was relatively basic, I would say. It's shared bathrooms, which not everybody loves, I know, which I mean, I was fine with. And, you know, the bedrooms themselves, comfortable, but no frills. The studio, the art studio where we were, was lovely and spacious and light and quite hot. Like I say, it was really hot when we were there, and some people found actually it was too hot to work in the studio and they chose to go sketching outside. And the whole week was a mix of sketching outside and then working on sort of more considered pieces inside. And that was the sort of theme of the week, at least for me. There was a real mix of people in the class. There were a number who said literally haven't picked up a paintbrush in 50 years since I was at school and I was rubbish then, through to at least one really very talented, not quite professional artist. But just a really lovely mix of people. And I thought one of the great strengths of our teachers, so our teacher was a lady called Tessa Pearson, who is an artist. I'll put a link to her website. If you're on Instagram, definitely follow her on Instagram. She posts beautiful photos of her work, but also her garden and her dogs. And yeah, she was lovely. And what I liked was we didn't have loads and loads of upfront teaching. We had some. So we certainly had some on the first day, and then at sort of moments during the week, she'd sort of bring us together for a little session. But it wasn't loads of that. And I thought that was really wise because, like I say, everyone was at such different stages and needed different kinds of help and encouragement and support, that she worked, I think, really well, not just to work out what sort of stage people were at and where to start, but also what they loved and what their taste was and what they were interested in. So one of the things I really appreciated throughout the week, she'd often be thinking of other artists and she'd come along and she'd say, Ros, I think you'd really like this person, or, you know, so-and-so, I think you'd really enjoy looking at this work. And so she really tailored a lot of her teaching and a lot of her sort of inspiration and enthusiasm to each of us. And when we on the last morning went round and looked at everybody's work from the week, one of the things I thought was really impressive was how different it all was. We were not learning to paint like Tessa Pearson. She was teaching us how to paint like ourselves. And I really appreciated that. But there was a sort of method and approach that she was sharing with us, and it was really around the use of sketchbooks. So I will take you through some of the work that I did in my sketchbooks, as well as the sort of more finished pieces that I came up with. And so the first day, we actually spent most of the first day in the studio, and we all had a sort of vase of flowers and we could swap around a bit. And we had to just do sketches based on that vase of flowers. And she'd shown us an example, and it wasn't about creating, it certainly wasn't about creating botanical drawing at that level of precision, or even really representational art, very figurative art. She was interested in helping us to distill what we were seeing, what was interesting to us that we were looking at, and putting shapes or colours or textures down that would represent that. So I'm going to start, and this is the worst part, I'm going to start by showing you what I did on the first day, just so you can get a sense of how much this changed during the week. So I think that we've got some first day things in here. Yep, that is definitely a first day picture. I think it's that way up actually. There we go. Let me hold it like that and then you can see. So these are some sort of, I think this might have been crocosmia that I was trying to get these sort of shapes. And then there were these beautiful sort of thistly blue stars that I tried a number of different ways. It's pretty pathetic, I think, that one. And there's a couple of others. Oh yeah, here we are. This one. So I was going with a bit of coloured background, and you can see This is still the same vase of flowers. This is still the Crocosmia, but instead of doing the petals, I've just done this sort of orange wedge. She was quite into orange wedges. And then I've tried the stars of the thistles in a different sort of way. I think this bit at the bottom was sweet peas. It doesn't really say any of that. Okay. I think this was a different vase. Yes, it had these purple sausages in that I don't know what plant they were. But I mean, it's a little bit freer. It's a little bit more thoughtful, perhaps. I think that's the last of those in that book. But I also did some in this book. So you can see again, there are those blue stars and the Crocosmia. It's pretty pathetic, I think. It doesn't really look like anything. That was not bad as a sort of representation of that one flower, but it wasn't that impressive. I think that was probably the best thing I did on that first day. So one of the techniques we were using, and this was what I did for the daisy here, was using effectively wax crayons or slightly more sophisticated oil pastels, although she was very clear the cheap oil pastels are better for this. But it's that thing you do when you're at school. If you draw with like a candle or some wax and then you paint over it and it resists that. And so it's a nice way of getting the white, but also I don't know if you can see a little bit of the texture that comes through, particularly if you're using textured watercolour paper and you put the pastel, the oil pastel on quite lightly, it will reflect the texture of the paper, and so you can get some really interesting textures there. And I think that was all I did on day one. And I have to say, I was quite discouraged on day one. She did it and hers looked great. And you're like, oh, she makes it look so easy. And mine looked rubbish. And anyway, but that was day one. Day two, we went outside. And this is where I started to really enjoy myself. So we were in the garden, beautiful garden, quite warm again. So I didn't stay out for the whole day because, you know, sunburn issue aforementioned. But I did do a number of sketches. I'm just looking, I don't know whether... One of the things she was very keen on was that we should be working multiple sketchbooks. And part of that is because when you're using watercolour, you do need to wait for things to dry. And if you're using multiple sketchbooks, working on 2 or more pieces at once, you're much more likely to be disciplined about that. Oh, look, I've got some more from day one in here. Okay, I might just show you that because you can see again, I'm using the... wax pastel crayon thing technique there, and you know, I think maybe that was my most successful from day one, something like that. I don't know if I've got any more. Yeah, okay, so that was day one. So day two, I did 2 sketches actually from the same spot of the same area of the garden, and I think I will show you this one first because this was the moment where I really was like, oh, I think I'm getting this. So this was, you can see, it's quite difficult to show you all of the sketchbook and me. There we go. So you can see, obviously, the orange lilies with a big thing in the middle. This was like a bank. And so at the back, there was this sort of yellow spikes of yellow flowers with some green leaves that you could see. I don't know what it was. The lilies going across. And then there was this one, which I've done with these sort of pink triangles, and I brought some over here as well. And they were sort of deep pink, really deep sort of magenta-y pink spikes of little fuzzy flowers. I don't know what they were. And then there was some lavender. And actually the lavender was not at the bottom of the bank. It was on the other side of the garden, but I really liked the lavender. And so you can see I was doing that thing of thinking about, I'm just going to show you this half of it, of thinking about the big shapes and putting in just some suggestions of texture. And we were using not just watercolours, although we had a little sort of outdoor kit we were supposed to take, which included some watercolours, but also I've things called Inktense blocks, which are ink based, as the name suggests, but they sort of work like watercolours, but they're very intense in colour. Some acrylic ink, so the black outline on the lilies is done with black ink, acrylic ink. Also, I bought, which was not on the kit list for the course when we were buying acrylic inks, I bought the one in fluorescent pink, and I have to say I did not regret it for a single second. It was glorious to use. So there's that. There was some of the waxings to get some resist in there. So lots and lots of different textures. There's some pencil work. I don't know if you can see that in the, yeah, here we are in the lavender, using watercolour pencils over the top. So all sorts of different media. And at this point, she was very keen that you should just use whatever you needed. Obviously, she's a professional artist, and it's important for her that her final pieces are properly light fast so that they last well. But in your sketchbook, you don't need to worry about that, and you don't need to necessarily use the same kit that you would use for your final pieces. Your sketchbook is about recording the information. What were you looking at? What did it look like? What were the shapes? What were the colours? What were the textures? And using whatever tools and media you like to really convey that. So so I did this really big, in my biggest sketchbook, double page spread of the bank there, and I really liked it. And as I was working on that, I was also working on this. Now this is the same bank. I've gone a bit further back, so at the back there was a tree with kind of dark leaves. I don't know if it's a copper beech or something like that. Then there was the yellow spiky flowers, and here you can see I've focused a bit more on the green of the leaves, the orange of the lilies, and then at the front, actually what there were with sort of, I don't know if they were geraniums or something like that, but some kind of pink flower there that I brought out. And it was, you could tell the garden was planted by someone who really understands garden design, because the whole thing came across in these sort of wedges. And so that's what I did. I sort of exaggerated the shape of those wedges and put in the base colour for each, the dominant colour for each, and then worked in some of the shapes around that. And I found I really liked that sort of shape of layout. So they were my two big sketches from day 2. And then where did we go after that? I'm just having a look. I don't think it was there's anything useful in there. Okay, so this is, I think, where we went next. And you can see, hopefully, how I got to this. Oh, it's upside down, that, from that. It's the same sort of wedge shapes, it's the same basic colours, but I'm experimenting with different sorts of textures. So let me show you here. This, which, you know, ended up a bit more orangey than it should have done, and I'm thinking about how do I convey the leaves in that, and then the sort of textures of the little flowers with those dots, a sort of simplified version of the lilies, and again those little pink flowers that were sort of star-shaped or cross-shaped. I've experimented still with keeping in the green background, but having the textures come over the edges of those wedges there. That is actually, I don't know if you see that, that is a collage. So I did these pieces separately, and I was thinking I wanted maybe to keep the white edge where I'd ripped around the collage. That's what I was trying out there. Yeah, I didn't absolutely love that, but you can see how it's developing from one thing to the next. This is where it went next. So again, those triangles now becoming a bit more defined and specific. I think, yeah, on this one they're outlined in ink. I put in some background ones. I haven't put green at all between the wedges, and I've left it kind of white. And you can see the other big change on this one is I've decided to abandon the pink flowers that were actually there, the little geranium-y things, and I've brought in the pink triangular ones from my other sketch to put there. I didn't know what I was doing with this section here, so I've left that. This went a bit blobby with the ink, but I decided I really like those triangles, and I liked this sort of dark blue as the background colour. She was very keen to get people away from using too much green, and I sort of understand why. Green ends up being a bit kind of, oh, it's just green, everything's just green, and there are such different types of green, and sometimes it's helpful to exaggerate. So this is where that ended up by the end of that day. I tried this kind of big green circles, I didn't really like that. I tried making the lilies even more stylized just with the stars, and then I worked a bit more on the pink triangles. So that was sort of day 2 and day 3, I think. Day 3, I went out and did a bit more sketching. I was looking at a different scene in the garden. There was beautiful sort of vegetable patch which was completely overgrown with poppies and marigolds and other flowers. So these are the sort of poppy seed heads, and you can see the marigolds and poppies, and then this was the sort of grass bank at the front with some little pink flowers in it. So I really liked that scene, and I wanted to work on that as well. The outside of the building where we were, it was an old barn, had painted black wooden slats with these beautiful white agapanthus against it. So I did that. I thought it was so beautiful, I had to do it, but I sort of didn't think it would really go anywhere, and it didn't. This is white acrylic ink on the black background. So I was glad I'd done that, but then that was the end of that. Where else did we go? Let's have a look. The problem with lots of sketchbooks is finding where you are. Okay, so what I found was, Tessa didn't do this, but I found it was quite important. Her first thing was sit and look. Look and look and look, and really see what you've got there in terms of the shapes. Where is your eye drawn? What are the things you are interested in? And I just find it's much easier to look if I'm drawing. So that was my first little sketch of the area that I then did this painting of. So I didn't draw and then colour in, and she's very keen you shouldn't do that, and I do have a slight tendency to do that. But I did find drawing this, for example, here, I've put in the stalks with all the seed heads, and I thought, you know, I just think that's messing up and I don't need that. So I got rid of those, and that was quite helpful. And just a sense of the sort of sweep of the thing, and was I drawing these, and so on. So I drew a little sketch. Okay, we'll come on to that in a moment. I think, did I draw? Oh yeah. So this was one. I really liked this, and then I messed it up. But you know, it's a sketchbook, it's fine. I started thinking about the big shapes of those poppies and the marigolds and the circles of the seed heads and the little pink flowers. And I was really enjoying that, and the big shapes and the thing. And then I started putting in a darker background, and I was like, yeah, that looks rubbish. So I left it. But it's fine, it's a sketchbook. That's what it's for. So then I did go back into the studio and started to coalesce my ideas. And I did decide quite early on that I wanted to do some collage work. I really love collage work. I may have mentioned that before. You can see there's a collage there, those butterflies. Yeah, I think that might be the only one you can see from here, but I have quite a lot. This one hanging on the door actually is sort of a textile collage as well. I really like collage work, and I wanted to try that. So Tessa, although she mainly paints, has done some collage work, and she had an example of one there that she showed me of hers, which was great, and it was quite inspiring. And I thought, right, that's what I'm going to do. So I spent quite a lot of Wednesday preparing sketches around composition. I'd got those two big things that I thought I wanted to do, the triangle wedges and also the poppy field. And in fact, I decided to go back to the big lily sketch as well and do one of those. And so I was thinking about what sort of papers do I want if I'm going to collage, and painting papers, finding papers, reusing bits of sketches, working out what I was going to need and how big it was going to need to be and how it was going to sit on the page. So I think let's talk you through that with respect to the lilies one, because I think I did most work on that. So I'll show you the original. This is the original sketch, so you can see what I was starting with. Oh, there we go. So big, wide, 2-page spread. And I decided, well, Tessa said, and I agreed with her, that in fact, I didn't necessarily need to do the whole thing. And we sort of agreed that actually this composition worked quite well on its own. We like this sort of yellow band here, and then the orange coming in, and the lavender at the bottom. So let me just show you some of these. These are sort of me trying to work out composition of that. So this is quite an early one. Square, because I had a square page. You can see I've put in the sort of outline of that, the sort of top of this yellow bit with that kind of square blocky outline, some wobbly bits for the lilies, and then the half circles of the lavender. What I've not included is the pink spiky flowers. And in fact, quite quickly, it became clear that that was going to be one element too many to go with this sort of layout. I'm just looking, yeah, there's another one here where you can see what I'm starting to do here is think about the curves here. I've still got this going fairly straight across, and then the lilies coming in this kind of dynamic bit. You can see these are not drawings. This is just an outline of where the composition might go. And where that ended up, okay, this was the next step. So going a bit more specific, you can see I'm thinking about, well, I might have lines coming down the yellow bit at the back, and then the curves going across here, and then the spikiness of the lilies going across both of them. And actually at this point, you can just about see I have got some zigzaggy pink bits. Okay, that's the layout of the other one. And then this is what I ended up with. This was my working sketch for that. And I've put back in more of a sweep for the yellow bit, these two quite well defined half circles for the lavender, and then the spiky lily in the middle. So this is where that one ended up. It's not completely finished and I haven't had time to go back to it, but I think it needs a little bit more work on the lilies. Let me hold back so you can see the whole thing. There we go. So this ended up not being a collage, and I will tell you why. I had been thinking it would be a collage. I had been working on painting separate bits for these sections. It had gone really badly. They looked awful. And I think I have been using collage as a little bit of a crutch. So I'll show you my other two collages in a minute. And I really like them, and I think collage was the right way to go for that. But I think for this one, I've been thinking I should do this as a collage because that's safer than doing it as a painting. And on the last morning I got up, I was like, you know what, I just have to paint that. So it was a bit much. I only have one morning to paint this, and that's why it's not completely finished, because you have to wait for stuff to dry. And I put quite a lot of ink on it, and you have to wait for ink to dry a lot. So I think it does need a bit more, although looking at the camera, I think it looks better than it does in real life. I think it needs another layer on the lavender and another layer on the lilies. I don't know if it needs any more in the back, the yellow. But you can see it still has that real graphic quality that I had in my sketch when I was thinking about this as a collage. But it has more of a sort of cohesiveness than in my head the collage would have done, and I think that's what helps. I do think it helps, and this was sort of more by luck than judgment, because I was all doing it in such a rush. I'd painted the main sections, and then I thought, no, I do want a background, and I wanted this kind of square that has bits slightly coming off the edge of it, and I wanted it in this sort of dark colour. I'd done some swatching of colours, and I knew I wanted it in this. But I knew I couldn't paint right up to the lilies because it was still wet and it would have all just splurged into a horrible mess. And so that's why it has got little white strips, almost like a collage effect. And the same here, actually, on the edge of the yellow. I don't know if you can see that. I went in and added the lines, drew in the lines with ink around that, but not perfectly. So again, there's bits of white showing, and I think that works really well. I do want to go into the lavender, I think, and put more, not loads, but little white highlights there as well. And I want to bring out, well, I was going to say I wanted more of the sort of white and yellow on the lilies, but looking at it now, I'm not sure. So anyway, it is still slightly under consideration, but I was really pleased, and I hope you can see how it distills from the original sketch, which was just, this is what I can see, these are the colours, these are the sort of shapes I'm interested in. You know, those elements are all there, but it is worked out differently. And I think it's not perfect, but I'm really pleased with it. And I think that's how I felt with everything, actually, by the end of the week. It's not perfect, but I felt like I had accomplished the best pictures I could accomplish that week. And that was very pleasing. You know, it wasn't that sense of I can see it in my head and not get it on the page. What was in my head came out on the page. And that was very, very satisfying. So that was the first one. Let's go back to the triangle one. This one actually did end up as a collage. Again, I don't think it's perfect. In fact, I have an idea, which I think I'm going to work on later today, actually, of where this is going to go next. What I did, all of these triangles were painted separately, and then they were layered up with big geometric shapes behind them. So squares, just strips and triangles that sort of reflect the colours and the shapes on the watercolour bits themselves. So I painted the blue rectangle first, then I painted these triangles and worked on those, putting in more layers and more textures, cut them out, cut out the shapes, glued it all on, and then did a little bit more work after it was all glued on. So this was the sort of red tree that was in the background, which had quite geometric sort of shapes with the light coming through and some of the dark. These were the yellow flowers. They were little circles on spikes, and this ended up being quite circly and dotty. And I used some of the wax pencil on that, and then ink on top, white ink for that. You can see the lilies obviously again, and then these triangular flowers did stay in this one. So that's that. Now you notice at the beginning of this episode we didn't do off the wall, and that's because I'm going to show you something on the wall. Ta-da! So this is my wall. This is my TV. It's a Samsung frame TV. It's the most expensive TV I've ever had by a country mile. And one of the things I love about it, the main thing I love about it, is that when it's not being used as a TV, instead of having a black screen hole of doom in the middle of your wall, you can display art. And not only that, you can buy frames. So it does come with a black frame, but you can buy, and I've bought, replacement frames that clip on the outside in a variety of colours. I think you can get a wood effect one. There's a pink one, which I did consider quite a lot. And then I went for this white one. So it just, people definitely come into my house and kind of go, where's the TV? And I'm like, you're literally looking at it. It is brilliant. Because of the nature of my house, this is a solid brick wall. So there is, can you see there, a cable that is just about visible. If you have a normal stud wall, you can drop the cable down through the stud wall and just have it come out where your plug is. So it is kind of brilliant. And so I've taken a photo of this. Obviously it had to go this way round. It wouldn't really fit that well, but I think it's fine. This way round, and I have put it on, it's this way round in fact, isn't it? No, this way matches how you can see it there. And so I now have my art on my TV, which I'm very pleased with. I am going to have another go at another one of these, but I feel like, let me find the original sketch of this one. You can see very much how it's come from this to this. And I think, you know, we were doing a lot of work this week on how you transition from sketch to a more considered finished piece, how you refine, how you think about colour and texture, how you try things out, how you sketch out composition. And I was really pleased where that ended up. So those are the first two, and then the third one, I mean, I say third one, I was working on all of these sort of at the same time, you know, swapping in and out as one needed to dry or as I needed to think about another one and so on. So this was largely based on this, but also the version that went really badly wrong. Actually, this was the sort of most influential one. And I thought that was really interesting because I mean, I did think this went really badly wrong. What you can see here is dreadful, really dreadful. But nonetheless, it was the sketch that was most inspirational for me. So what I did with this one, I haven't got any to show you. I've got some synthetic paper. You can buy very expensive synthetic paper called Yupo, but you can also buy quite cheap synthetic paper if you have a Flying Tiger shop near you. And they sell pads of, I can't remember if it's 10 or 20 papers. I think it might be 20 sheets. It's not huge, little A5 pad, 20 sheets for £2. So I would highly recommend that. And when you put watercolour on that paper, it takes a long time to dry, but it dries with a sort of sheen to it, and you get wonderful effects as the paint marbles together. So I painted up some sheets of Yupo in a sort of a duck egg bluish colour for the seed heads, and red and orange, and 2 different versions of pink to be the different shapes on this. I tried out various kind of coloured backgrounds for it, and this is where it ended up. I haven't got loads of process photos for this because it kind of just came together. So I did try different backgrounds, and that's one of the fun things about collage. You can have all your cut out pieces, and then you can just do little swatches of different background colours and try them on it and see what you like before you do it on your final nice piece of watercolour paper. So I ended up with this sort of pale bluey lavender, and it was interesting when I was out doing this sketch. These were all the things that I sketched, but when Tessa came along and she was looking at it and we were talking about it, and she pointed out the borage flowers, and borage are sort of fuzzy, I don't really like them, fuzzy flowers with no really distinct shape, but they do have a sort of bluey violet-y colour to them, and her observation was that colour is part of what's making everything else pop. So when I was thinking about this background colour, I thought, well, I'm going to try something. And this isn't quite the colour of the borage. It's a bit more lavendery than that. But actually, that was what gave me the inspiration to say, do you know, I think I should try that colour and see how it works. And I tried various others, but I really liked this. So that's what I went with. Anyway, I'm going to hold it close, and hopefully you can sort of get a sense, particularly on the seed heads, you can see just the sort of fluid way that the paint mingles and merges, and that's because I've used that Yupo paper and then cut the shapes out of it and had a lot of fun playing around with laying them out and gluing them down. And again, the shapes are very simple. These little flowers at the front, they're just squares. There was one that was sort of darker flowers that I've just represented with squares, and some lighter flowers with these little sort of circles, and I put it all on actually and glued it all down, and then was kind of and in the end I went back and I did add in the lines for the stalks, and not as stalks, I've just put them in as lines in the background, but that's what they're inspired by, and they're just drawn on with a sort of bluish acrylic ink in the background. And then glued on top of it, and then I've worked into the poppies with a little bit of black ink to give a sense of this. They did slightly look like lips before I put that in, so I was glad I did that. And I also went in with a fine liner and added some lines into the marigolds to give them a bit of form, and I don't know if you can see that, some little dots in there just to give a little indication of texture. I was very pleased with that. It's a bit tame, maybe. I kind of love the wildness of the others, but I feel like in terms of what was I looking at when I was looking at this view in the garden, that is what I was seeing. The blue of the blue circles of the seed heads, the bright red and orange of the flowers, and then these little hints of pink in the front. Yeah, I don't think that's quite my style, but it was a pleasing outcome to have got to. So that's what I produced on my holiday. I came back buzzing, really, to think, yeah, actually, it's okay to like the things I like. It's okay to paint the way that I paint. It's okay to experiment with colour and collage and texture and different kinds of materials. Unlike Tessa, our tutor, I am not anticipating becoming a professional artist. So I'm much less worried about having final pieces that are, you know, light fast and archival quality and all of that kind of thing. You know, they might end up on my wall for a year or two and then that's it, really. That's their likely outcome. But I really loved it. While I was there, actually, somebody, it might have been Tessa, asked me, you know, where does art fit into your life? And I just said, round the edges. And that is right. You know, I have a job that is important to me. I have other commitments. I have church, I have family, I have friends, I have, you know, other interests and other things that I'm committed to doing. I don't have space for art to become the centre of my life, and I don't think it would be right for it to be that way. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being able to do not art every day, or not even necessarily every week. I mean, I have art class every week, but I don't do this sort of my own led creative art every week, and I don't have capacity for that, not just in terms of time, but in terms of emotional energy and space and all of those things. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay if what my art ends up being is 2 or 3 weeks a year during holidays. That's great. Or an occasional day snatched here and there. That's great, with the friend that I went on holiday with. So we'll see, but I really, really enjoyed it. We talked also quite a lot, actually. Tessa talked to me quite a lot because I said I was very interested in textile art. About, she said all my finished pieces, she was like, I can really see how they are inspired by textile art and how they would be translated into textile art, and so can I. And so I think that's my next step. I do have that other collage thing that I want to work on, but also then thinking about how would I translate these into textile art and maybe have a go at some of that. I mentioned earlier that Tessa herself had done some collage, and she had one with her to show us. And this is it. This is an original Tessa Pearson collage. And you can just really see how her style is so bold and blocky, and really distilling down what she sees into very, very simple elements. So these sort of purple blobs on green, that'll probably be some kind of flower. Maybe they were alliums in the circles, and here with just simple dots. A lot of this, it's really fun to be able to touch it, is that sort of oil pastel with paint over, giving the textures. And all of these are bits cut out and arranged and stuck together, and I just love it. I love how you can see the brush strokes on the collage papers that she's made. I love, and this is the thing that I just, the more I look at it, I just think the more this is absolutely brilliant. And this flower in the middle, she's got these cut out blue petals, and there are 4, and they're quite carefully cut out. I'm going to hold it really close. Quite carefully cut out petal shapes. But then when she's done the outline, she's used, I think this is, I don't know what that is actually. I think it's ink. Anyway, I think it's ink. She's inked in 5 petals in the outline. So you get this one here, which kind of looks like it's in the background, but it just gives it so much more energy and life and depth than if she'd just done 5 petals and 5 outlines. Yeah, and I sort of love, you get this sense of sky with maybe tree trunks in the background, and then grass and leaves and flowers and different textures in the foreground. So I absolutely love it. Yeah. So that is what I have also come home with, is an original Tessa Pearson collage. So thank you very much for that, Tessa, and thank you for just a wonderful, inspiring, creative, happy, joyful week of painting, which I shall be working from, no doubt, for months and years to come. It really was great. Tessa also runs painting holidays in Morocco with a friend of hers, who actually I've been on a course with her friend as well. Maybe one day I will save up and go on a trek in Morocco and come back with even more amazing artwork. We shall see. Anyway, I am away again for a few weeks now, not really doing art things. So I'm not sure when there will be a next video to show you. I have got some things that I've been doing, some sewing, some cross stitch. Knitting has been a bit of a disaster. Took some knitting with me, the cardigan that I'd started on the holiday, and on the first day, I think on the way there, I must have dropped some stitches somehow, and spent the first day trying to pick them up, spent the second day trying to pick them up, spent the third day ripping out about 1.5 inches of the cardigan, and by the end of the holiday I was not quite back to where I'd started. So that was not the most productive thing. But I do have other things to show you, a few things that I bought, a few things that I've been working on. There may be more of that while I go away. I might try and take my knitting and get some progress in the right direction on that. So I will have things to show you. There will be a video quite soon, I think, after I get back, but I'm not going to promise exactly when that will be. So I hope you enjoyed seeing that. I hope you too are inspired. Do go and have a look at Coombe Farm Studios. Do go and have a look at Tessa's work, and get out your paints and go out sketching. That's what I say. Have fun, and I'll see you soon.